Senate Majority Leader John Thune told me in Washington why Republicans were forced to use reconciliation rather than the traditional appropriations process to fund border security. Watch.
It's unfortunate, Maria, we have to do it that way, but that is what the Democrats have forced us to do. They are not going to fund. They have adopted this open borders, defund police, mantra that has become part of their, it's a signature issue and it's an article of faith if you're a Democrat in the country these days.
So this is all politics.
Well, it is on their side, totally. I mean, I think, this was, all these things were agreed upon. The funding for ICE and CBP, there was a bipartisan agreement to do those things. Minneapolis happened. They withdrew. Then they wanted more concessions. The administration sat down with them, offered up a robust package of reforms. They rejected it, and those agencies were shut down for 50, 60 days, something like that. And so we really had no choice but to use reconciliation. I don't like doing that. That's not the way to fund agencies like this. There's a normal appropriations process that ought to be used for it, but that's what the Democrats left us with. And they seem to be happy with proceeding into an election with this campaign position of we are anti-law enforcement, we are defund the police, we are open borders, we are pro-sanctuary cities. I think that's a losing issue for them, but they don't seem to see it that way.
Well, look, you've got rules around reconciliation that it has to show spending decreases, right? I mean, there are certain budgetary issues around it. Now, the president is calling on you to immediately fire the Senate parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, to clear the way for passage of the Save America Act. Let me get your take on this. I mean, the president wrote on Truth Social, we have every right to change her and should do so immediately. As long as she's there, we will never get our desperately needed Save America Act approved and put into full force and effect. Is that true, Senator? I mean, this is an 80-20 issue, right? People want to be able to have rules in place that you show ID, that you have proof of citizenship to vote. How come we can't get this across the finish line?
Well, because we don't have the votes. And for me, it's a function of math. And we are, and it's a popular issue with the American public, but the Democrats in the Senate have block voted against many of the things you just mentioned, and we have put those votes on the floor. The issue with respect to the parliamentarian is one where, even under reconciliation, it has to be principally about budget and not policy. And Save America would not be at a 51 vote threshold. It would be at a 60 vote threshold under the rules, and so she would just basically enforce the rules. Now, on the other side of that, she did rule in our favor last week because there was a weaponization amendment that would have passed at 51 that ended up, under her interpretation, it was a 60 vote threshold, and so we were able to defeat it. But had it been at 51, there would have been a anti-weaponization, or I should say an anti-weaponization amendment attached to that bill, which would have jeopardized its passage in the House and probably jeopardized the president signing into law. So you win some, you lose some with a parliamentarian, and obviously that is one issue during reconciliation that the president is focused on.
Yeah.
The other issue that he talks a lot about is nuking the legislative filibuster, which we don't have the votes to do. And on that issue, it's not even close. I mean, some of these issues, it's a close call, but there probably aren't half of Senate Republicans who are in favor of doing that.
So you don't think then that Elizabeth McDonough is all about politics? Like, the president said that Obama appointed her, and this is politics. You don't think that you think she's being fair?
Well, I think during the Democrat reconciliation bill, before we got the majority, the last one that they did, she ruled against them on minimum wage. They wanted a minimum wage. She ruled against them on a carbon tax. She ruled against them on DACA legalization. There were a whole bunch of things that the Democrats had on their agenda that they tried to get done that she ruled against them on. So at that time, they were calling for her resignation or her firing. It's a hard job. It's a very specific skill set, but reconciliation has specific rules around it. And I think you do have to have somebody that is hopefully a fair arbiter, a fair referee of these disputes that come up about whether something is at 50 or 60 votes. But again, Save America Act would have been a 60 vote threshold.
Is there anything more you could be doing to stop the Democrats from upending President Trump? Trump's agenda. I mean, when you look at just 2 weeks ago when you all left and you had a June 1st deadline to deliver that to the president's desk, the reconciliation on immigration, and you didn't. Was that because of the anti-weaponization fund? Was it because of the ballroom? Was it because the president supported Ken Paxton? What was it?
Well, I think it was probably at that point a combination of all the above. But I do think the announcement of the weaponization fund, timing-wise, was very detrimental to consideration of the reconciliation bill. There were, as you probably heard, we had a very raucous meeting with Todd Blanche in which he came in and answered questions, but there were a ton of Republican senators who were prepared at that point to vote for amendments on the floor on that issue. And we felt like rather than proceed and lose on the floor, we wanted to do our work and ensure that when we brought it to the floor that we could prevail on a lot of these amendment votes. And ultimately we did. But I guess I would say that, you know, the calculation I have to make and our team has to make is, do we have 50 votes? Can we win? And it's a function of math. And obviously the president wants things done, some of which, you know, we've tried to do through reconciliation, some of which have to get done through regular order. And when you have to go through regular order, it's a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. And as I said, there aren't anywhere close to the requisite number of votes to change that, notwithstanding the president and others out there who are clamoring for that. It's just not going to happen. So we've got to deal in the real world, and if we had put that bill on the floor before that break, we would have lost.
Yeah. You had a conversation and talked with President Trump about the Texas primary race. You wanted him to support John Cornyn. He ended up supporting Ken Paxton. Will you get behind Ken Paxton and support him?
Absolutely. I mean, I met with him last week. We've been in touch, obviously, working with his campaign. We have to keep Texas red. It is essential to protecting and preserving our majority in the United States Senate. If we lose Texas, we're in big trouble. So, you know, obviously, John Cornyn is somebody that's admired and respected in our conference. And yes, I made my arguments to the president on his behalf. He's, in my view, a very effective conservative senator for the state of Texas, but now we've got to get behind Ken Paxton.
It seems like the Democrats will just use any excuse to stop the president. Now it's Bill Pulte. They don't, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries said over the weekend he will not support the extension of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That expires this week, FISA, unless the president withdraws his nomination for Bill Pulte. And you say?
Well, that's an irresponsible position on behalf of the Democrats. Another irresponsible position. And it goes along with open borders, defund the police, sanctuary cities. Now we're going to defund the intelligence gathering capability that has been responsible for 90% of the drug busts that we've had, and it's prevented terrorist attacks. It is a tool. It's a national security tool. It needs to be reauthorized. The Democrats have indicated, and they did. We moved to proceed to it last week. They block voted against it. We've got to take care of the business of national security. If we don't get that right, the rest is conversation. And the Democrats right now are dug in over this Pulte issue, and it's an irresponsible position to take.
Why are they so dug in, Senator?
Well, I mean, I think they view him as part of, quote, weaponization at the housing agencies, and are at least fearful, or they're saying that this is, they think he'll do this in the intelligence world. These things are totally unrelated. Reauthorizing, if you're worried about the management of the DNI, what you want is guardrails around whoever is in there. This bill does that. This is a bipartisan bill. It was negotiated and bicameral between the House, Senate, Democrats, and Republicans, with significant reforms in it, and it needs to get passed. It doesn't matter who's running DNI. This is legislation you want in place. Yeah. So it is it's a bogus argument, and this is the problem we have with Democrats. Their Trump derangement syndrome, the blind hatred they have of the president, is preventing them from doing anything, even if it's something that is in the national security interest of the country. And so we've seen that over and over and over again. But I think that's what they're going to run on, Maria. I really believe that that's part of their political base in this country now. Does not believe in funding borders, does not believe in funding ICE. And right now, it appears, doesn't believe in funding the intelligence agency.
Right. I understand that, but I feel like they are always the loudest in the room. I mean, this whole idea of the Democrats bringing up weaponization, to me, as an observer from the outside, is so rich, because I watched what took place in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and that is trying to take down a sitting president. I mean, spying on him while he's a president, creating this Russia collusion narrative, and then pushing it through the CIA and the FBI. The whole country was ripped apart. How come I don't hear Republicans complaining about that kind of weaponization more often?
Well, and when we do, it doesn't get picked up, obviously, as much. It's partly what the media decides to cover. The Democrats are, obviously, they're vocal. The minority party has the luxury of being able to throw grenades and throw bombs. And, obviously, we have the responsibility of trying to govern and work with the president to get things done. And in the Senate, at least, on most issues, that requires some bipartisan cooperation. But, if there are things that we can do through reconciliation, and we did last summer, as you know, we did over 100 bills were included in that big package, things that we've been trying to do literally for decades. And all the time I've been here, it's the most consequential piece of legislation we've ever passed. And we did it because we kept our team together. It's getting harder to keep our team together. And if we can't win on the floor, if we're going to lose and jeopardize the president's agenda, we'll look for an alternative plan, a way to achieve that objective in a different way. But there isn't anything about this right now that is easy. Everything is harder than it should be because of Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, I mean, why is it so hard? I mean, the president is putting America first. Do your colleagues, are they uncomfortable with that?
Well, I think that part of it is, again, you have several people who are not running for re-election, and some of whom lost primaries against opponents that the president endorsed.
So they're mad at him.
There's a certain amount of it. I mean, and you can't get around it. It is what it is. I just have to figure out how to manage it and how to get votes to get things across the finish line. And last week, that thing went on for 18 hours until 5:30 in the morning on Friday morning, because it was a huge.
You mean the Votorama?
The Votorama, because it was a huge fight to ensure that we could protect the base legislation, keep corrosive poison pill amendments from being added, and we had a lot of Republicans who wanted to vote for those. So it was a Herculean task to do that, but ultimately we succeeded. But that's going to be true now on pretty much everything we do between now and the election, because we have a lot of people who are leaving, and it's just a more challenging environment. It's a political environment. You get no cooperation from Democrats, which means you have to have every Republican. And just like on the SAVE Act, the Save America Act, for me, it always comes down to it's a function of, do we have the votes? And as much as I would love to be able to get that across the finish line in the Senate without nuking the filibuster, we're not going to be able to do it because no Democrat's going to vote for it.
Are you going to be able to codify some of the president's executive orders? He's done so many executive orders. I mean, even when I speak with CEOs on permitting,
right.
I mean, they want to see this permitting situation extend beyond President Trump's term.
Right.
And if you don't codify those, then we're just going to see those executive orders reversed, aren't we?
Well, and I think that's the challenge you have in any administration that comes in, and undoing a lot of the damage that Biden did, and we had that. The Trump administration had to do that. But you got a great regulatory environment. As a general rule, there's still things out there that need to be addressed. But the reason I think business is doing well investing, in spite of some of the political and some of the economic headwinds we're facing with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, is because of all the policies we put in place, both legislatively and then also the regulatory environment the administration has created. And so you have incentivized investment, and we want to continue that and continue to look for ways to take that, that capital off the sidelines, get it in play, create those good paying jobs. And I think, one of the things we can do is permitting reform. And honestly, right now, that is something that could be something we could do at 60 votes in the Senate. There are Democrats who are interested in permitting reform for different reasons than Republicans are. But I do think that's one thing on the agenda between now and November. There are a handful of things that could get done at 60 votes in the Senate. Well, I think that the point on that I would make, and this is again, do we have 50 for it, whatever that is, and as the House thinks about it, they've got to contemplate, do we have 218 for it? and you have to offset things. You know, you have to pay for things, and so there's going to have to be additional pay for us. The concern I have about another reconciliation bill on the floor of the Senate, particularly if it touches the areas that the Finance Committee has jurisdiction over, is would we on the floor lose amendments that would undo what we did last summer? Because there are a lot of Democrat amendments, some of which Republicans would vote for, that would go at some of the things we did last summer. For example, the Medicaid reforms or the SNAP reforms. We did more, spending reduction, entitlement reform than we've done at any time at the point I've been here in the Congress. And so if they target those things and we can't defeat those amendments like we did on the bill this last week, then that would be really, really harmful, because what we did last year, we got to protect that and defend that. And so the question is, could we, in the context of another reconciliation bill with all the free agents we now have on our side, and obviously no help from Democrats. So it's a calculation you have to make, and you have to be really thoughtful about how you do it. And I've told, and I'm meeting with the Speaker later today, we meet regularly, we have to ensure that we are coordinating our effort, integrating it, working together, ensuring that whatever the House does is it's linked in with what the Senate to be able to get 54.
What are you expecting on the Clarity Act? I don't know if you saw my interview with Jamie Dimon. He was very upset about the yields that will be paid from crypto. He thinks, and the banks in general think that that's going to mean people are going to take money out of their deposit accounts and put it into crypto platforms. He says he just wants fairness. These are companies that are not FDIC insured, and yet they're acting like a bank.
Right. Well, so these banks are, and I hear from the community banks. You're hearing from
Same thing. Community banks are also upset.
JP Morgan Chase and Goldman, places like that. But the community banks, in my state at least, are fairly exercised about this. And I think the one thing that we're going to have to, if we get clarity done, and the bill's out of the Ag Committee, which has some jurisdiction because of the CFTC, the Banking Committee has jurisdiction because of the SEC, and frankly, we need rules of the road around the digital world. And I think it's important that we move the legislation, but they're going to have to land this issue of yield. And I know the White House has been involved trying to get the banks to the table, but at the end of the day, if we're going to get this done, Maria, it's going to take some give on both sides on that issue. And the other thing that's going to have to happen to get any Democrats to vote for that, because this will be at 60 in the Senate, is the administration is going to have to work with the Democrats, Mark Warner and others, on this issue of ethics.
Yeah.
That's a key right now to get bipartisan votes on the floor for it.
And that's for stock insider trading.
Correct. And so that, and then the yield issue, and then I think also filling CFTC and SEC and some of these open slots on these commissions is also something that's going to be probably necessary to get this done. And I think that's something the White House is interested and willing to do.
Leader, let me end on the midterm elections, ask you how you're feeling, because the other day I saw what Chuck Schumer was saying over and over again: we're going to take down Susan Collins and we will take back the Senate.
Well, I mean, I think that, any election starts with quality candidates, and I think in all the competitive races around the country, we've got really high quality candidates. And then you've got to have a record of accomplishment to run on. You've got to have resources to get that message, that story out to the American people in their states. And our job is to ensure that we've got those resources. Now, this is a tough political environment. It's a midterm election. President's not on the ballot, which means turnout's going to be an issue, and we've got to really be working the ground game. But I think we've got strong candidates in the right places. The Dems they're giddy and bullish and all that, mainly because they think that there's going to be so much intensity on the Democrat side. What we've got to do is build intensity on our side and ensure. And part of that is resources and raising money. But whether it's Maine or North Carolina or Ohio or Iowa or Alaska, we've got some pickup opportunities in Michigan and New Hampshire. We're playing offense a few places. We're obviously playing defense in some of these places, but we've got quality candidates. And I think a drawing contrast with your opponents. Elections are fundamentally about differences, and you've got to give people a choice. And the Democrats in all these races, whether it's Graham Plattner in Maine or Tallarico in Texas, these are far left liberals. This is a party that is completely out of step with the American people. But we're going to have to point that out. because they're not going to do it. So we have to define these candidates, create that contrast, and give the American people a choice, because elections fundamentally are about differences.
And you didn't mention California, but we're still waiting on the results.
Yeah, which is crazy.
The primary that was a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's another example of California incompetence on so many levels. If the states are laboratories of democracy,
and maybe the reason we need
California's
Save America Act.
Well, it is. It's a great example of that. Yeah, and I think of course they've got a lot of other issues in California too when it comes to elections. But Save America, the one thing that Save America addresses, which is somewhat controversial, is mail-in balloting. And to me, I cannot defend a voting system where you don't get results for days. I mean, that just fuels cynicism and mistrust in the minds of the voters, and that is you don't want to be there. I mean, you want confidence in your elections, and that means you've got to have a system that accommodates. Frankly, I love same-day voting, but most states now, and we've deferred in many cases, regulation management of elections to the states. A lot of states have the early voting, absentee voting, mail-in voting, all those sorts of things. One of the things, a simple fix would be a photo ID to vote. Now, people say, well, they could use a driver's license, and you don't have to be a citizen to get a driver's license. So the second component of that, obviously, is citizenship to register. And we've given the Democrats a chance to vote on that, and they've continued to vote against it. So we ought to make an issue out of it.
Well, we've seen how they issue driver's licenses to people who are driving these tractor trucks and getting into accidents. All right, final issue here, going into the midterm elections, what is your message going to be to the voters who are going to come out on Election Day for the midterm elections, as you want to say is your most important accomplishment in this Congress?
Well, I think, the challenge we have, obviously, is gas prices, and that, again, comes back to the Strait of Hormuz. But I think, if you look at what we care about, what Republicans care about, it is creating an opportunity for working families to get ahead. And part of that means having more money in your pocket. And I think that everything that we did, whether it's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, reducing taxes on seniors on Social Security, lower rates, incentives for business to create better paying jobs for people in this country, it is the right economic policies. And I think, and then the secondly, of course, and frankly, this is probably first, safe and secure communities, safe and secure neighborhoods. Is my neighborhood safe? Is my community safe? Is my country safe? I think those are the issues, and the Democrats are way off the reservation on all of those. But I think when it comes to the pocketbook issues, the kitchen table issues, it's making the argument to the American people that these policies are going to lead to a more prosperous future for them and their families. And if you look at where the benefits of the working families tax cuts went, when it's called the working families tax cuts, it's for a reason, because working families are the major beneficiaries of that. And when it comes to gas prices, and look at what it's happening in the Strait, I think most people, if they see the trajectory being one where everything is going to change and get better and gas prices are going to come down, I think that's what they're going to make their decision based upon.
Even if they see just a little progress.
Well, and I think that's right. And I think that it's all about what's the long-term trend, and is this going to be better a year from now? And I think that there's if the president does the right things there and gets the right outcome, I don't think there's any question that the answer to that is yes.
Well, given all of that, what you've put in the big beautiful bill, what else would go in a third reconciliation package?
Yeah, and that's the question. There are a handful of things that sort of got left on the cutting room floor in terms of tax policy, but a lot of it would be probably money for defense, national security, and some waste, fraud, and abuse measures to help pay for that. And there are other things we can do in that space. But we did a ton of great tax policy. We did major entitlement reform. In fact, we did more entitlement reform in the Senate, if you can believe that, than the House had when they sent the bill over, which is hard given the obstacles that we have, but with the Byrd rule and everything else. But it was a very successful outcome, and we need to make sure we give those policies a chance to be implemented. And if you talk to any business leaders, and you do, and I do, they will tell you that that is really key to the investment decisions they're now making. And that coupled with the regulatory environment, and I think energy policies will be a big part of it. And I think as the things start to, we get clarity in what's happening in Iran, I think that is going to start moving in the right direction as well.
I think you're right. Corporate America is increasingly understanding the national security issues.
I think they are.
And the need for this defense money. Do you support a $1.5 trillion defense budget in 27?
I don't. I support it conceptually. As a practical matter, we can't get there that fast, but we do need to move in that direction. If we're asking all these European nations to up their defense spending in NATO, and so we've got to do the same.
That's a great point. Senator, thank you so much.
Thanks, Maria. Nice to be with you.
Great conversation. We